Hi, Al. It's so good to see you.
Take it away,
Jennifer, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How's the crisis been for you?
I'm
You look
retired,
good.
so it's great. I got no complaints. I haven't gotten sick. We wear masks and everything. We're all trying to do the best that we can, but I have grandchildren, and this has been really tough getting back. Some of them did online, and some of them did in the class, and the ones that were doing online decided to go into class because it was just so terribly confusing for them. And as grandparents, we sat by and tried to help, particularly my wife. But anyway, so you are going to run again. So Jennifer, why do you want to run again for House District 69? But the first time you talked to a couple of years ago was like, boy, you want to get into this one now that you've been in it. So why do you want to rerun again?
Well, okay. So my first 2 years, I learned how to be effective in the process. I was able to pass 7 out of the 12 bills. Well, no, yeah, 7 out of 12 bills. So 60% of my policy solutions became law. Now they might not have passed in my name because minority freshmen, but one was executive ordered, one was similar to a bill that was taken up by my Republican colleagues that I later co-sponsored. One was an amendment onto another bill, but I figured out how to really make an impact on things that are important for my district and the people and the businesses in my district. And I want to go back up there because I think we need people who know how to be effective right now.
Right.
I also happen to work in economic and workforce development. I went back to school to study urban development, labor organizing, and all sorts of other things to figure out how to basically build really strong societies. And I think that's what we need to help combat the economic crisis. And then as somebody who comes from and today, I help build businesses. So I put that knowledge and work with small businesses to help them get a brick and mortar presence in our community, to help them so they can grow and hire more employees. I have been giving a lot of free advice to clients because times are so tough right now. But I think that I have the knowledge and understanding of the economy, what small businesses need, what our workers need to kind of weave together smart solutions. And then coming from the university, I value solid research and science. And so, my response to a health crisis is going to be, well, what does the best of our scientific knowledge say about this?
Yeah. So let's just talk a little bit about that. Then I'm going to there's a couple of questions that are being sent to me, but I'm real curious about this because I think by the time we get done, I'll have interviewed about 26 different politicians. And I have children that are in the healthcare industry, and particularly emergency room physician. So this COVID thing has been.
Thank you. And I'm sure you're worried.
Thank him.
Or thank him or her, yeah.
He's got all that gear. He looks like he's a guy who's going to Mars. But here's the question about this. And who should be responsible for having all of these supplies that we need for a pandemic? Should it be the state? Should the state be responsible for 20 million people having 20 million pieces of whatever to protect them? Or is it a federal government responsibility? Because I think as a citizen and as a journalist watching back, I thought that was really the confusion when we started, besides the fact that no one really completely understands COVID, but that there was this battle going back and forth between who's responsible for. Is the state, what do you think? Is the state responsible for having that stuff?
We need a coordinated response. So we got, lots of money to the state from the federal government. And private industry is also ponying up and making sure that they are putting in place protective gear. But I also think that the state should advocate to the federal government, especially, there's no point in having a governor who's on the Trump train if he's not going to use that to advocate for our businesses and for people to have what they need. We need a clear pathway forward. We need specific asks of the federal government. We need to put pressure on the federal government. We can't operate in a deficit in Florida. So we can only do what our budget will allow us to do. And we have some money in a rainy day pot, but we can't nearly meet the demands in the way that the federal government could. What we could do is we could say, hi, federal government, like we'll put up, for every dollar we put up, can you put up 4 or 5? We
Sure,
want to
sure.
make sure that we're protecting um, our first responders, people who are on the front lines of COVID, and they deserve to get hazard pay. And they deserve to have PPE that they're not having to recycle week after week. I mean, we
Right.
really need to take care of people and make sure that, and we need some skin in the game. You know, I mean, this is a public health crisis, and
Sure.
our healthcare system is overwhelmingly privatized, but we do need to set up those partnerships that we're so good at setting up in Florida to make sure that we're protecting our workers, um, our doctors, our nurses, and the public at large.
Okay. A couple of the questions about some other issues that you'll be facing. Do you support Visit Florida and Enterprise Florida, especially now that we've had COVID? And guess what? We rely on tourists so much around here in Florida.
Okay, I'm glad that you asked me about Visit Florida. In the past, before the majority party defunded and started attacking Visit Florida, during crises like this, Visit Florida would actually offer grants to businesses that they represented. They
Hmm.
would interest-free grants, like here's free money. We know that you were just, normally it's hurricanes and tornadoes and things like that, red tide or the oil spill, when even
Right.
though it didn't hit our shores, and I always use that as a caveat, it did impact our tourist sector. They would actually pony up money to help our local businesses. So I am a big fan of not only of Visit Florida, not only because it's not just a marketing tool, and that's important. Marketing is important. Getting
Hmm.
the word out to people is important, but also because of the role that they play in supporting our mom and pops, our Main Street businesses. And then Enterprise Florida, yes, I have seen partnership. I have worked on MOUs with Enterprise Florida type organizations in other states, and I know how well they can work
Yeah.
if we have clear memorandums of agreement, if we actually put together deals that help the people who need to be employed, you know, who are underemployed or unemployed in our own communities,
Hmm.
um, and put people to work building the buildings. I mean, there's ways that Enterprise Florida can really work if we choose to actually make it work well. So
Okay.
I'm in favor.
Okay. So here's another one. Do you support the original language in the Felon Voting Rights Restoration Program that required all fees be paid before voting rights are reestablished?
Oh, that's like, you asked that in a tricky way. Can you say that again? Because
Well,
normally when people
what I'm
ask is
Yeah,
like,
let me just paraphrase because I'm not trying to be
okay,
tricky with it one way or another. Do you think that we've done the right thing as far as felons are concerned when at the beginning it seemed like you had to pay back all of your fees? So, and now we've got Michael Bloomberg who says he's going to pay back some of the fees and that kind of stuff. So now it's gotten all political all over again. What do you think?
well, I think that it was a tricky question. And I sat on the criminal justice subcommittee, the first committee that heard this issue.
Hmm.
And I think that there was a time where we would have done well, where we could have struck a deal where some of the administrative fees and other things wouldn't have been considered. And those
Sure.
accumulate and are really hard to pay back.
Yeah.
So like, not, and for whatever reason, that was taken off the table. And so, having worked very closely with Desmond Meade and with Neil Volz, who are the head of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, and knowing where they were at that point of time, if
Right.
we would have struck a deal that would have that would have been, we could, that would have been closer to the original intent, and also because it
Right.
wasn't every single thing. It was like, and I don't want to bore you with
At
the
least,
details.
right. At least part of it. Okay. So
Yeah.
there, yeah, the negotiations kind of broke down to begin with, and then it got all political. Move on to
Yes.
something else.
Uh-huh.
Transportation. There is called a regional rapid transit project from Wesley Chapel to St. Pete. Is that going to do it? And let's just talk about transportation in a bigger way. Dear Lord, it's the one thing that our area, we do so well in everything, but man, transportation and mass transit's kind of like it. I've ridden on the bus too. I just want you to know that for a couple of years I rode the bus because I had kids in high school and I had to split a car. So I love mass transit. I'll just put it that way. I love it. But what now?
Okay, so here's what the vision is for that. And this would be smart planning. And I know that the candidate before was talking about, you know, long range planning and forecasting. So I bus rapid transit is basically a train on tires. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to have a designated lane. It's supposed to go fast. It's supposed to have few stops. It's supposed to really connect a region. And it's supposed to be the first step in future planning. So now it's a bus. In the future, it might be an automated, light. We're on the cusp of next generation mass transit, and it's a
Right.
lot
Yes.
more affordable. So the next step would be that iteration, or it might be autonomous vehicles and an autonomous vehicle route. But we need those designated lanes, and we need to connect the region in that way. And I think it's a smart first step.
Okay, good. Do you support the $15 minimum wage referendum that would eventually raise the minimum wage to by 2026 to $15?
Yeah, so that's going to pass. I mean, it's been polled, it's 66%. I think the
Right.
timing is really worrying, and I feel horrible. I feel as happy as I am for workers, I am worried about about my small businesses.
Right.
And I'm also worried about the rising cost of childcare, of early learning. I mean, I think that there's going to be unintended consequences, and for
Yeah.
that reason, when we go back, if we call a special session to deal with COVID, I absolutely want to put together a relief package for small businesses to help absorb the additional expense for salaries for workers, but also, I mean, I wanted to do, yeah, I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
it's wrong if we posit small business versus workers. I think that we need to meet both, and there's
Right.
ways of doing that.
Right, because no, I don't think anybody intended that a McDonald's job or even a Chick-fil-A was meant to be a 40-hour-a-week thing to support an entire family. So that whole argument's going to go on. So lastly, affordable housing. It's again, I've covered politics in this market since 1986, and I always see affordable housing as they get started into something and then it falls apart, and then they get started and it falls apart, and then you have some problems in some of the local directors of housing authorities. That's like, oh my gosh, what are they being paid and what happened, blah, 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 blah. So what's going to be done for affordable housing? Don't we need it?
Yes, we need workforce housing, period, full stop, end of story. We absolutely need it. When I look at, and talking about minimum wage, a family of three in the Tampa Bay area needs to earn $22.84 in order to not be on the precipice of family financial disaster. So what drives up the cost of living? Childcare, healthcare, transportation, and housing.
Yeah.
And so we need to also address what drives up the cost of living. Housing, the governor vetoed the Sadowski Trust Fund for affordable housing. Again, the legislature finally passed it, and the governor vetoed it because he said, well, we have this CARES money coming down that's $200,000, but that was for rental assistance. It wouldn't build new housing stock.
Right.
And the Sadowski builds new housing stock. I think that St. Pete is doing a great job of committing to building attainable housing. We have a project over on 34th Street for workforce housing. I know that this is very controversial in my district, the senior housing that's being built on 64th where the church is, but honestly,
oh yeah,
the people who are going to move there are the people who are currently in single families who don't want to take care of a full property and don't have the resources to continue to pump in to a standalone single family dwelling. And that's what we saw. That's who moves into the affordable housing complex for seniors in South Pasadena. That's who moves into Benjamin Towers. They are our neighbors.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And when affordable housing is done right and attainable housing is done right, it actually increases the property values because you're using a parcel of land for its highest and best use.
Yeah.
And so that is what I'm saying.
All right. Jennifer, always good talk. I'm glad to see you haven't lost your enthusiasm.
Oh, Al, thanks. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, well, it's good to be. Now, she's running against Linda Cheney, who chose not to be with us. We offered the invitation, but they chose not to. So, Jennifer, good luck to you. House District 69 on the Democratic side. Good to see you. You take care now.
Good to see you too, Al. Thank you.